Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to discuss a little bit about predictive analytics. Here are the three main points that we'll be focusing in understanding the predictive analytics, the second the data collection techniques, and the final about statistic foundations. Let's start from the definition of predictive analytics and why do we need it. So predictive analytics, it involves analyzing historical data to forecast the future outcomes and to have the more accurate trends and prediction. Why it's important in business decision making? Of course, it enables us to make more informed, more accurate, more precise decisions by identifying potential risks and opportunities. And the last one, of course, it's going to have an impact on competitive advantage. It enables us to have more accurate and more strategic edge or cutting edge information after having the correct a correct implementation of the predictive analytics. So you will be winning in the market once you have the exact or close to exact answers to your questions using the predictive analytics. We have a lot of industries, and now we need to see how predictive analytics is being used in different fields. We estimate that since we're having the numbers, use numbers, quantitative and post qualitative data, I've differentiated four main industries where we could have the potential of using the predictive analytics. First is, of course, finance and banking. The second would be healthcare and the medical spheres. The third, retails and e-commerce. And first would be manufacturing and supply chain. It's going to help us to expand the efficiency, to make more precise plans for the future, to boost the financial revenue, and of course to predict the behavioral trends much more effectively rather than without using the predictive analytics. As we know, analytics is going to be something that's going to expand, it's going to develop. And here I've mentioned four future trends that could be observed in analytics, how it's going to develop and improve. So the first, of course, is the utilization in AI and deep learning advances. So it's going to be like more sophisticated with more improved predictions and automation. The second would be real-time data processing. It means that the analytics in real time would allow us instant and very fast, very quick decision making in different environments, no matter how dynamic they are. The third is ethical data use and privacy. We anticipate that the growing focus on safeguarding data privacy would be enlarged and expanded based on the predictive insights. And finally, how it's going to be integrated with different IoT and different devices. So we once we get connected the predictive analytics to different IoT devices, the data collection would be much more easier and much more faster, and it's going to have a very positive impact on the predictive capabilities. Types of data sources that I've mentioned can be aggregated into three types. And so in some sources they're mentioned four types, but here I'm making it like more fundamental course. So I differentiated on the three types: structured data, unstructured data sources, and the third one would be real-time data streams. So we know that whatever we call the structured data, it's whatever can be represented in tabular form in tables, and it's going to be in a more organized way and in specific databases when the data can be represented in the spreadsheet. Unstructured data sources that includes text, images, videos, and different media content. It's going to be more, we would be requiring more time to process because it cannot be accurate and cannot be very represented, organized, right? It's information, it's a data that we're getting from different devices, and we cannot store it in tabular form. And finally, the real-time data that's being acquired through streaming, data generated through different devices online, through streaming, during the events and activities. That's going to be very essential. That's are very essential for decision making. So that's the third type, and yeah, that's called the data streams. Yeah, the data that's being received from the real-time data streams. So why is it important to consider the data quality? because whatever we're dealing with, the data and further the information that we're drawing from the data needs to be exact, needs to be precise. That's why for us, data quality and precision is going to be very, very important, and not to consider the data accuracy would be something like very violating to any industry, to any company, to any firm. That's why we need to ensure that the data that we receive is correct and precise, and it's very, very important for the predictive analytics. The completeness of the data sets, no data should be omitted, and then that completeness needs to be observed and implemented throughout the whole data collection in order to minimize the gaps. No gaps would be the most ideal version of the data sets. Consistency across the data sources, which means that the uniform formats should be and standards across the data sets should be maintained, and there should be no problems with integration issues. And finally, of course, about the timeline and currency of data. We're using the up-to-date information, up-to-date data that improves the relevance and accuracy of the predictive models. So, what are the tools for the data gathering or data collection? I've also differentiated three of them, even though in some sources you can meet even more. So, the first would be the web scraping technologies. Those are automation tools that would go into candidates, into people's, right into consumers' websites, and collect the large volume of data from those sources very quickly and very efficiently. The next would be survey and feedback platforms, tools, online surveys, and different forms. They would be gathering direct user input for analytics. And finally, sensors and IoT devices. There would be devices that collect real-time environmental or operational data for predictive insights. So once we're dealing with the data, of course, we need to remember about statistics and the main concept. So we need to understand the data types, because if we do not understand the data types, then we would be having, some mistakenly used or maybe tools or some concepts. So we differentiate mostly quantitative versus qualitative data for accurate analysis. So measure of central tendency. MSD enables us to explore the mean, median, and mode, and that's very helpful. And that's being done to summarize the data distributions effectively. Variability and spread would be calculated in order to understand the data dispersion by using the concepts as data range, variance, and standard deviation. And finally, the data visualization technique. Once you have your data ready, you already play with it and you create different charts, graphs. You graphically represent your data and you visualize it for further decision making. The last thing to remember about statistics, that there's descriptive and inferential stats, and these are the main terms or main, let's say, calculations that you would be using in statistical analysis. I'm sorry. It's about the descriptive stats, which is mainly used to describe the data at an initial stage. Inferential statistics would be more about the prediction or generalization about the population from sample data. Sampling techniques would be used to represent samples for analysis. So you have a large data set, but you would be taking small samples in order to have some analysis or some prediction about what the data is about and what are the ways to use it in order to draw the right conclusions about the data. And finally, it's about the confidence intervals and the hypothesis testings, because you would be using different tests in order to understand the reliability. You would be assessing how the estimations and how the data will be in order to get the further calculation and assumptions, to draw their assumptions right correctly, and it's going to be calculated in the confidence interval and estimated in percents. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention to watch my video, and I will see you in my next tutorials. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.